Danie from Indigo Fruit Farming in the Western Cape near the town of Robertson, and we're in a block of W.Murcott mandarins. And this is an unusual block of mandarins because it's got the tramline system of planting originally, and what they're in the process of doing at the moment is removing every second tree along one of the tram lines, and eventually they'll remove every tree. But they're in this intermediate stage where they're gradually in the process of removing the tree. And as you can see, that one stump there, that was removed last October. But what we're here for is to talk about canopy management, and would like to ask Danie tell us a bit about your pruning regime, when you do it and and what kind of things you target when you're pruning. So please go ahead and explain.
Yeah, sure. That'd be a pleasure. So with W.Murcott being a late mandarin, usually harvest keeps us from pruning too early. So if we can't prune right after harvest and there is already too many flowers, because we do not want to play around in the tree with fruit while with fruit setting going on, then we would postpone pruning up until December, early January, which will be our summer prune. We will then come in and form our structure. By that meaning, so mainly we'll come around, remove a shoulder, which will be the shoulder of the tree, which will be overhanging branches like this, and we will come back and cut it at a break where there is already vegetation to grow for next year to bear fruit on. We don't necessarily want to come down and cut it too deep, because that we'll lose a lot of bearing wood like that. Another structure cut would be a height cut, where we call it a pole removal, which will be one of these guys that goes to the top. Mainly up there we'll also have wind damage fruit, so we will then come down and remove it quite here in the middle to allow extra sunlight in as well. And here you'll also have bearing wood that will get more sunlight and start the process all over again.
So are you aiming to try and get light, like canopy growing like in layers, and keeping the canopy low rather than too high, and opening up sections of the tree here I can see to allow the canopy to grow in here rather than having a wall?
Correct, yeah. So some people call it, we're not pruning, we light managing. So you cannot farm without light, so that will be our main focus, yes.
So when after that structural pruning, where you're bringing back those bigger limbs, taking the height down, you come in and do some other type of regrowth management. And I can just see an example here of some shoots that have got tipped off. There was some structural pruning going on here.
That's correct. So that would have been our shoulder cut that we did in this summer. And then our regrowth management will then be to manage the shoots coming back here. So it's breaking back by hand, as you can see here, that was done. So this will then be our bearing wood for next season. We try to finish this end of February, beginning March, so that there is enough sun and daylight left in the late summer before we go into winter for these buds to form.
So here we've got this where you've broken it off in February, March, and there's some new growth here coming up from that break. So theoretically you'd like to see some flowers on these shoots already and bearing in the next this next season.
100% correct, yes.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. These will be the typical ones that we break off. We kind of came down to shear height, and it will be a normal break like this. Usually we'll also, if there's too many, we'll remove the strongest ones completely, and we'll keep the softer ones and space them out.
And for the initial structural prune, how many rand per tree does it normally do the contractors charge to do a structural prune?
We will come in, depending on the orchard and how it looks, there will be a light prune or a medium or a heavy prune, depending on what needs to be done and what was done in the past. So we will come in at say R2, R2.50 for a light prune, R3, R3.50 for a heavy prune, or then R5, R5.50 for a heavy prune.
And with the skirting too.
And then that will then include your shoulders, your height poles, water shoots, removal, and then skirting as well at the bottom, so that we don't have branches hanging on the
So
ground.
that was the structural prune, and then comes the February, March tipping, let's just say, exercise. What kind of cost per tree is it for that exercise?
There we're going, depending on the regrowth that you get, each orchard will be different, but they will go from R1 to R2.50 per tree. So depending on, especially also if it's a younger tree, it's going to be cheaper, because as soon as you get older trees, there's going to be ladders involved. So you'll need to get to the height, and that is a timing issue there as well. So it costs more per tree.
So we've heard growers that are using plant growth regulators and chemical thinning, but firstly, with the use of plant growth regulators, I've heard growers using uniconazole around May to increase the level of flowering. Have you had to use that, or what's your experience with it?
Luckily not. We have not used it on Nadorkots yet. We have experienced a good enough flower that we receive here in the Western Cape, but I did have seen good trials that have been done on growth management in order to reduce your shoots, in order then to save on pruning or shoot management.
And that timing is around flowering for the shoot management, whilst the May one is for the flowering, as I understand. Correct. Okay, the next thing is that you've also got a very good thinning program of thinning fruit. So you can explain what you do with the fruit thinning program for Nadorkots.
So yeah, starting in January, we start measuring our fruitlets that we have on. So we will randomly select different branches, measure and count all those fruits, which will give us then an average of millimeters from 8 to 12, 14 millimeters, so that we can have the perfect window of where we want to spray the carousel for fruit thinning chemically.
And is there an optimum size that you try and target the carousel for spraying?
That will be very depending on our crop load that we have that season. So we will wait a bit. If there's less crop, we will wait a bit later. If there is a heavy crop load, we will come in a bit earlier.
And do you find that the carousel tends to drop the smaller fruit rather than the older fruit, and that's why you wait a bit longer?
Correct, yeah. So the sizing, so the chemical will drop the smaller fruitlets, yeah, below that.
And then if there's still a heavy crop load, would you sometimes, or how often would you go in and do hand thinning?
We would initiate one more action with hand thinning, which we will then send people in with rings, depending where we are in the season, between end of Jan and February. We will have them going in with rings, either 20 to 24 mils, depending on the week we are in, and we will then measure fruit. If the fruit goes through the ring, it's too small, it will not reach the size that we wanted by harvest time, because we know our growth curves from the previous years. We can estimate where it will be, so we can with confidence take that fruit off and discard them, so that they don't impact the rest of the yield.
And are they also targeting blemished fruit and sunburnt fruit and pulling that off the tree?
That would be our first go-to. So we'll go in, look at a branch and see which one's got blemishes on, which one's got sunburn, and remove them first, and then we'll go with the ring and see if there's anyone else that needs to come off.
Now, I've done thinning myself, and I could stay on a tree for half an hour thinning it and just not stop. So how do you manage the time that people take for thinning a tree?
It comes with homework that needs to be done beforehand, knowing the time it takes to remove 30, 40, 60 fruit, depending on your orchard that you are in for that season. If you have a high crop load, you want to take off more fruit, so then you can go to 3, 4, 5 minutes a tree. If you only want to take off the blemished fruits, or only 20 fruit, then you can go down to 2 minutes a tree, just to make sure you get those ones off and not waste time.
And is there a maximum time that you'd say, listen, it's just getting too much, where you have to stop there? How many minutes per tree would you call it quits?
The cost of labour will definitely dictate on that time. So I would say anything from above 8 minutes, it's going to take. It's not going to be cost effective.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with the next stage of pruning.
Thank you very much.